Hey guys, Lytane here, and it is the scary month of October. That's right, Halloween. Now down here in Australia, we don't actually celebrate Halloween, but that doesn't mean I can't get into the festive spirits. So I want to review a game that's dark and scary and just filled with, great atmosphere and great music. So today I'm going to be having a look at Alan Wake. Oh, of course, my phone goes off in the middle of the take. Sorry, just let me... Hello? Hello? Is anybody there? Hello? Hello?
You. A review of Silent Hill.
Oh. Well, that was weird. Never got a request like that over the phone before. Silent Hill. Man, I haven't played that game in years. And you know what? Instead of doing Alan Wake, I'm gonna have a look at Silent Hill for the PlayStation 1 and see if that's worth it instead. Silent Hill is a game that was released in 1999 on the original PlayStation 1 from a company that everyone knows about called Konami. While this game was developed by a team called Team Silent, they did the first 4 Silent Hill games in the series under the Konami name. Konami wanted to try their hand at the survival horror genre that was starting to pick up steam, but have more focus on a Hollywood cinematic feel to it. In this game, you play as Harry Mason, and the game starts with you and your adopted daughter Cheryl driving to their holiday destination of Silent Hill. You are going out there because Cheryl has wanted to for a long time, and seeing as how you want to make her happy, you do just that. But along the way, you see a mysterious girl crossing the road, and Harry swerves to miss her, causing his car to crash in a ditch. Awakening sometime later, he sees that Cheryl is gone, and he finds his way into the mysterious town of Silent Hill. It's all really strange though, as he starts to see his daughter everywhere, and she's running away from him, and the town is covered in this strange thick fog which limits his visibility. It's also snowing, which is very unusual, as it's not even the right season for snow. None of this adds up. Harry starts exploring the town and meeting some of its, colourful inhabitants, like Sybil, a cop that's trying to figure out what's also going on, Lisa, a nurse who's scared of what's happening in the town, amongst a few others. But this town isn't as what it seems. Monsters keep appearing and trying to hurt Harry, and every now and then he gets pulled into a dark world that looks similar to Silent Hill but covered in rust and blood, and it's deadly there. Soon he learns of Alyssa, a girl that's central to the cult plot, and even that there might be a demonic presence to this town. Can you solve the mystery, stop the cult, and kill some demons? Well, yeah, probably, but aren't you supposed to be finding your daughter? Silent Hill is a survival horror game, much like Resident Evil, but it is vastly different from that game. First of all, it is more focused on the psychological horror instead of a bestial horror, and it has an everyman instead of a, trained operative. This really helps Silent Hill stand out because games like Resident Evil were focused on the monsters, where there will be zombies and, the viruses and all that kind of stuff, or Dino Crisis, which is more focused upon action-oriented horror as opposed to the other ones. This is all about the psychological traumas of Harry and the quest that he is going on. Even the scares are mostly based on psychological ones, whilst yes, it does still have a few jump scares, especially when you're walking around the areas, and because of the limited visibility, things will just pop out sometimes out of nowhere and you'll get scared. But this works on a different level, where it has so many scares and horrors and just creepy things that it adds so much to the game. Like at one point you'll be in a room and then you'll hear a girl crying, but you'll never see this girl. You don't know what's going on, you don't know what's up with this, but it's just scary, and it adds to everything that helps build the atmosphere of this game. That is a key word for Silent Hill, in that, Resident Evil and Dino Crisis and Alone in the Dark and other games like that didn't have an atmosphere like Silent Hill does. It doesn't just stop with the atmosphere of the world, it's integral to Harry's character as well. Because he is an everyman, he's just a normal guy, he doesn't have combat experience, he's not good at melee weapons or guns or anything like that, so he feels like a weak person, just a normal person in this world. That's really crazy. The fact that you are playing through and trying to make Harry just survive is integral to the way that this game comes across, and it's such a different tone than most of the other survival horror games of this time. This change in character means that combat really isn't the focus of the game. In Resident Evil, part of the game is about resource management, and fighting is pretty important. I can't stress this enough because you will be ill-equipped in Silent Hill, with you either having melee weapons or most of the time, or simple firearms that don't have much ammo. That makes the combat in the game very sluggish and honestly very hard. With the melee attacks, there's usually two types: the fast but the short range that can't stun enemies, or the larger ones that can stun enemies but they are a lot slower, and there's a good chance that you will get hit in the process when you're doing any fight, especially if you're fighting multiple enemies. When you finally pull out a gun and you feel how powerful they are and you can take down pretty much anything that comes in your way, it feels great until you realize that you're out of ammo, and then you have to switch back to the melee weapons. Honestly, the combat in this game is one of my least favorite parts of it. It's slow and it's clunky and it really isn't fun. The controls for this part of the game aren't intuitive, with the tank controls and poor aiming. I hate the combat so much, but I think that may be the point. Most of the encounters are avoidable, and you can run past many things throughout this game where only some fights are really necessary, and of course the bosses, which you have to kill. The developers wanted me to feel weak and unprepared and make it feel like I had to survive this place, and it does a great job at that. Every time you enter any kind of combat, you have to make the choice. Are you willing to fight and possibly break one of your weapons or use up all your ammo? Is it worth the fight? Is it worth the hassle? Or should you just run past it and pick a fight another day? Sometimes doing this will get you hurt, but it might be a better course of action taking a single hit as opposed to trying to fight all of the enemies on screen and taking multiple hits and using up all of your weapons. It makes every bit of combat feel so much more intense, and it makes it that you have the choice in order to do it or not. You might be looking at this game and thinking, oh, the graphics aren't too good, but for 1999 it was actually really fantastic. The FMVs are top notch, and I still think they look fairly decent today. It's true that some of the designs for the characters when they're not in the FMVs are a little blocky, but like I said, it's quite good, and the animations for all the characters are well done and fluid, especially the enemies. They just are creepy on a whole different level. The team behind this game tried to push the PlayStation to its absolute limits. They really tried to... Oh, what's happening with my lights? There's a storm going on outside, and so my lights are playing up a little bit. But anyways, the team behind this really pushed the PlayStation to the limits. They knew that you can't have big draw distances in PlayStation because you can't render too many things on the screen at one time, especially if you want them to look good. So they implemented a fog idea into the game, and I think that is a great idea. This limited the draw distance so you can't actually see more than like 5 meters in front of you. But instead of this being a bad thing, they wrote it into the game's lore. Like when you wake up in a foggy town. It's written in the book, it's written in different parts of the story, and there's snow falling, which is unseasonal. And instead of making it a weird just deterrent to the game to make it look a bit, so they could put more onto the screen, they use it as part of the lore, which just adds to the mystery, and it also adds to the atmosphere and to the scares of the game. Like I said, sometimes you'll be facing bad guys and you'll get this radio right at the beginning of the game. Whenever this radio has static, that means there's a bad guy present, and when that static starts going off, it goes absolutely crazy because you know that there's a bad guy nearby, but you have no idea where. And because of this draw distance not being very long, and because you can't sweep the camera around you very easily, it could be anywhere. And then they pop out either in front of you or behind you, you get attacked, or maybe you'll see it actually off in the distance, and you will be scared. And it just adds so much more to this layer of fear and intensity that you will get throughout this game. But what is a survival horror game if it doesn't have puzzles? And boy, does Silent Hill have puzzles. There are a few of the standard puzzles, like find a room that holds a key to open up a room that you searched earlier, or some kind of item that is used in the same way. There are other puzzles that take place over multiple rooms, and even one that requires you to play the piano, which is pretty cool, though I think a lot of people got stuck here, because I know I did. Honestly, most of the puzzles take a little bit of thinking and remembering of past locations, but they aren't too difficult. Also, there are notes scattered throughout the game that give you hints as to what you're supposed to do, so if you're reading things as you go, then you'll probably have a good understanding of what to do through the game. Though there might be a few puzzles that trip you up. I know it happened to me, and I had to look at a guide at times to figure out certain things, like that piano puzzle. Whilst you're solving these puzzles, sometimes you'll also be taken to the dreaded dark world. You'll hear a siren go off in the background, and then you'll be pulled into this evil world that is completely unrealistic and just batshit crazy, but it's also so amazing. Most of the textures change from the ones that you would normally see, like the blackboards or the hospital walls, into this rusted, bloodied look, and it is quite disgusting. But you'll be going through rooms that you have already been through, or similar looking rooms at least, but this time, instead of them being normal, they're this dark world. You'll also be fighting more monsters more often, because there's more monsters in this dark world. It is a staple of the Silent Hill series to pull the protagonist into the dark world in order to solve puzzles and fight bad guys. In fact, the final area in the game is all centered around this place called Nowhere, which is just pretty much the dark world. If you thought the atmosphere in Silent Hill was good, as soon as you get to the dark world, it just kicks it up a notch. You are on the edge of your seat because it is a scary world and you don't know what's gonna happen, and there are more bad guys and everything's going bad and it's just crazy, but you know, it's a lot of fun, and I think it's a great addition to the game. But one thing that I have to talk about is the story. It was made for the first PlayStation, and as such, some of the voice acting for it is pretty bad. Now, it's not like Resident Evil bad, we don't get any Jill Sandwich's line, but man, some of the interactions between Harry and the other characters are just woeful. He's got some bad voice acting, and it wasn't really the norm to have good voice acting in games. It was still sort of early in that era, but still, like, watching it back, you'll get a few chuckles as you listen to some of the dialogue in this game. It's pretty silly. My problem with this story is that even though Harry is the main character, most of the story isn't actually focused on him. Most of the plot actually revolves outside of his control. He is only there because. Honestly, there's no other reason. Cheryl, his daughter, is a main part of the plot. The other people that he meets on his journey actually are main parts of the plot. Aside from him helping out, or, you know, the bad guys or the good guys and the other characters in the thing, he doesn't really do much in terms of the plot. Most of the things that are happening in Silent Hill happened long before he got there. Most of the things that are happening in Silent Hill right now are happening regardless of if he was there or not. Really, he's just sort of around, and that really annoys me, because most of the later Silent Hill games, they focus more on the character and their struggle, whilst this one tried to focus a little bit on him and his struggle, but then they tried to explore the world of Silent Hill and telling you why it was like this. And that's a little bit bad, because while I like the world building and I like the idea that the story is told and, you know, we get a bit more understanding of Silent Hill, it's not really well done either. There's a couple of mysteries that don't get solved, but some of the ones that do are pretty silly, and it's all about cults and demons and that kind of stuff, and I'm like, this is the kind of stuff I didn't really need to know. I would be more happy just to be focused on, you know, Harry and his struggles, much like, you know, the rest of the games later. That it's not a bad story, but I just wish it was more focused on Harry and that he just had a bit more involvement in it. Now, some will argue that the story is the best part of the game, and I can fully understand why. It does have some compelling moments, and there is mystery to it, and I do like the fact that the story isn't just completely told outright to you. There's a lot of notes that you'll find throughout the game which, you know, lead to backstories of different characters and how other characters interconnect with each other. And honestly, when I first played through this game, I didn't read everything. I skipped past a lot of notes, and I didn't find a lot of them just because I was a silly younger person, and as such I missed out a lot of the story. I still got the grand gist of things, and I think it's cool that someone like me that didn't get the nitty-gritty details, I still understood what was going on. Now that I have played through it again and I get to read all those extra things, it just makes the world feel that little bit bigger and a bit more connected, which I like. So overall, the story to me is a bit of a mixed bag. Whilst I wish the plot was better and more focused on Harry, or at least had some better plot elements, I do like the storytelling, and I do like the world that it did set up, and I don't know. It's a mixed bag for me. One thing that isn't a mixed bag and is just plain great is the music. Oh man, the music is incredible. From the opening theme all the way through the game, it really puts you into the mood, and so many of the songs have this haunted quality to them. But not all of the songs are, well, music. Some are crazy sounds or industrial sounds that fit perfectly into the area that you are in, but you won't be listening to them on your iPod later. The last thing to talk about are the endings. Yep, endings. There are 5 ways to finish this game, with 2 bad endings, 2 good ones, and a joke ending. Honestly, the first time you play through this game, you'll either get one of the 2 bad endings or the good ending, and not the best one that you could possibly get, as it's a little cryptic to understand the first time you go through. They're all entertaining and finish off the story well enough, with the good plus ending being the canonical one. They also don't make a whole ton of sense, but that's a lot of this game. It just sort of doesn't make a full amount of sense, but then it tries to make it sound like it makes sense, so you just accept it. The joke ending is also great, and it's well worth a watch, especially if you've played through this game before. Completing this game with certain endings and difficulties unlocks some new content and weapons that you can use in further games, which helps add to the replayability of this game, which I think is pretty cool. Silent Hill for the PlayStation 1 is, in my opinion, worth it. It has great atmosphere, a fairly compelling and interesting story, if a little convoluted and silly at times. The FMVs and the graphics still look pretty good to this day, but I can understand if some of you think it's dated because, you know, people can't get over graphics, but I think that the textures in this game are great, especially the dark world that you go to. I like that they pushed the limitations of the PlayStation to show us what we did get with the fog, and I think overall it's just a fun game to play. That's not to say that this game is perfect. The tank controls are fairly annoying because tank controls have never been fun to use, and then they're even worse whilst you're in combat. And the fact that this game centers around you either choosing to fight or to flee, you can't really get around bad guys so easily a lot of the time because of that tank control nature. Also, yeah, some of the FMVs are a little bit cheesy and the dialogue spoken is sometimes pretty bad, but it's better than like Resident Evil, like I said. So I think I really think that this game is good. I think it has aged much better than Resident Evil because it isn't focused on combat, and the game puzzles are much more intuitive than Resident Evil. Like I said, I used a guide a little bit in order to get through this game, but Resident Evil I had to use a guide a lot more often because it's a lot more cryptic. I also think that the atmosphere and the sense of being lost in Silent Hill definitely great and still is there regardless of how old this game is. Man, all this talk about Silent Hill, I'm gonna pull out this game case and, you know, just relive some nostalgia, have a flick through the manual and all that kind of stuff. It's gonna be fun. Ah, my PlayStation 1 collection. Isn't it great? Let's see. Silent Hill. There it is. There you go. Silent Hill. Alright, let's have a look at the... Oh. What was that? It's a picture of me, and I'm standing next to somebody that's all been crossed out. And on the back it says Lytane and his rival school game championship. I have no idea what this is. I don't recall this at all. Well, if it happened at my school, I guess that's where I need to start my investigation. I want to find out what this means. I'm gonna get to the bottom of this.